from 97.3 ESPN.com. Frank Klose joins us to talk a little baseball. And don't forget the Powder Blue podcast tonight at 6. They'll have more on the baseball. But, Frank, I got to start off first by asking you if you stayed up last night to watch the KBO. Were you jonesing that much for baseball?
Well, I might have, except my daughter kept me up all night, and I was actually awake the entire time of the game, but I did not get to see it.
There's going to be a replay. Actually, I think the replay is coming on like right about now. So if you're jonesing that bad, once you get off this call, you can pop on a little KBO, right?
Yeah, 3 p.m. on ESPN2. You can watch the game in its entirety, and you can see Aaron Altair bat second and play center field and wearing number 23 like he used to with the Phillies. So Phillies flair in this game.
Yeah, there's a little Phillies flair. Now, yesterday, as you posted at 97.3 ESPN.com, Trevor Plouffe, who I barely remember having a cup of coffee. I remember him more with the Twins having some big power numbers out of nowhere for them a couple of years ago. He tweeted out some timelines for baseball. He said, want some good baseball news. I just heard from multiple sources that on June 10th, Spring Training 2 will start. July 1st will be opening day, and all teams will be playing at their home ballpark. So how much stock are we putting into this? Now, John Heyman just tweeted a little while ago that date sounds a little...
Yeah, Trevor Plouffe, who is best known as a Philly for his walk-off home run against Dodgers infielder Kike Hernandez, who was pitching in the 16th inning. This is his first scoop, I guess, he's ever making. Now, it sounds like this is sort of based upon some sort of something or another that's out there. I don't know what else to call it. In terms of some chatter that had been out there. I don't know how hard it is. We saw Keith Law come out and immediately just say that this was just plain false. But it probably does resemble some ideas that have been passed along the way, although it might not be the exact plan that we're going to see happen.
So we saw all these different plans, the Arizona Biosphere, the Cactus League, the Grapefruit League, the Texas getting thrown in there, 3 different divisions. It sounds as if we're just going to be playing regular old baseball with, a National League East, Central, West, and an American League East, Central, and West.
I don't know. I tended to think, now, I don't want to read into the Plouffe stuff too much, but it seemed to suggest that it was like the 3-league model that they were going with limited travel and staying on your coast or in the center of the country. I can't imagine they're just going to go back to normal. And, a lot of it's going to depend on, again, how things play out. We saw this week that a lot of the projection models are now predicting things to carry on longer and to be perhaps worse than they expected. And the reason why that the scientists at Washington State University say that is people are opening up too quickly. So that very well could have an effect on whether or not baseball is played. We see people are getting antsy. People want to be outside. But it's not necessarily the best thing for everybody in terms of getting through this quicker. And that's just something we have to watch.
All right, Frank, obviously, they're talking about the possibility of starting July 2nd. So let's just say that date's in play here. How many games do we get then?
I'd say about 100. I think that they would try to do about 100 games and then have some sort of playoff. That seems like the sample size you would need in order to have a meaningful season, although it won't be against the teams that they probably would have faced this season. On the podcast tonight, Todd Zalecki was mentioning he really missed getting to go to Wrigley Field in Chicago and out to San Francisco to Oracle Park. But I don't think you're going to see that happen. Unfortunately, Mike Trout probably does not come to Philadelphia and play the Phillies this year. But I think they're going to do their best to try to contain everybody as best as possible, and that probably means a lot of regional play whenever possible. Now, what we don't know is, when they come up with those, 10-team leagues, do they divide them in half and have teams play each other wherever regionally expedient? A lot of that remains to be seen.
Now, 100 games, to me, that's a good number. If they get around 80 to 100, how do you feel personally about that in terms of crowning a championship at the end of the year. Is that enough to say, okay, that was a real season to an extent?
That's a very, very good question. I can't believe that this will not go down in history as being different. I mean, we had a strike season in 1995. Now that World Series kind of stands, as normal. I don't hear much about the 1995 World Series as being cheapened. And what was that? The Atlanta Braves who won that year, if I'm not mistaken. But when you look at history, I guess it depends on how much you play. Now, just looking back, I can't find any other example other than the 1995 when the Braves took on it was the Cleveland Indians at that point. But but the strike shortened season, if we have most of the season, maybe it'll end up like 1995. But a lot could depend on how they want to approach the playoffs. Because if we see the three divisions and we see that you have to have, I don't know, two teams from each of these three divisions or leagues, whatever you want to call them, and then a couple of wild cards, but how do you even line up the playoff? I think that's going to be the tricky thing. So if you're not going to line up the playoff in the same way that you would normally, then this might just have to be the year where it has an asterisk, or maybe you don't even call it the World Series. Maybe you call it the COVID-19 championship. I'm sure they'll have a better name than that. But,
yeah.
But I think in history will just tell us that this year is going to be unlike other years.
There's no question. Now, I would say if you played 100 games, I feel like that's a valid season. The problem is, as you just kind of pointed out, if you're playing a 100-game season, but you're not playing a full schedule, meaning, hey, I'm not going out west, so we're not playing the Dodgers, you're not playing the Giants, you're not playing the West Coast teams, I think that kind of cheapens it a little bit. So the 100-game total is a good number, but not playing all the teams. So would you, instead of playing the West Coast teams, do you think they would add interleague games and have you play the American League teams that are on the East Coast, or just keep the National League teams playing the teams from the East and the Central?
I don't think it's going to balance out if you just do it that way. Now the way that the East, so to speak, allegedly lined up. Now, in the AL East, you would have Boston, Yankees, Baltimore, Tampa Bay. I don't believe Toronto. I'm trying to remember if Toronto was part of that discussion. I think it was. So there you have five, and you'll have five NL teams as well. It remains to be seen if they try to make a division each out of those five teams. There haven't been that many specifics, but it seems to me like you're just going to play teams on the East Coast. There's not going to be a separation like that. So it seems to me that the Phillies would be playing the Orioles, would be playing the Pirates, they'd be playing the Tampa Bay Rays, they'd be playing the Toronto Blue Jays, they'd be playing the Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, Mets, and a game's a game under that scenario. I don't think you can really divide it up at all at that point.
All right, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. Of course, tonight, the Powder Blue Podcast. They'll have plenty more on all of this stuff. Todd Zalecki also will be a part of the podcast tonight. You can hear that at 6 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Frank, take care, bud. We'll be hearing you tonight.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one. Be safe.
Yeah, Frank Klose, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.